Now, in weight management, we look at two areas. We look at diet and exercise. So it's kind of an input and an output system. What you take in, if you take more than what you put out, you're going to gain weight. If you put out more than you take in, you lose weight. So in the category of input, which is your diet, and I want to say that diet has really degenerated to a four-letter word. And we think of it as the crazy things you do or the weird things you do to try to lose weight. And diet just simply is the foods that you consume. Now in that realm, there are three different areas I want to discuss. I want to talk about the quality of foods. I want to talk about the quantity of foods, and then the frequency and the timing of foods. So in the quality of foods, we'll discuss the different types of foods. So carbohydrates, you hear a lot about carbohydrates, and the people who are diabetic usually will limit that in their diet. And that would be your simple sugars. It'll also be your breads, your rice, your pastas, your potatoes. Those are considered complex carbohydrates. In the area of protein, we'll look at your meats. So your red meats, your fish, your poultry. There'll also be your legumes, and your nuts have a little protein in them, but they have a lot more fat, which is the next segment. So fat is another area of a type of foods. Now, the fat usually accompanies other food. There's hardly any foods that are just solely fat themselves. So like your red meats will have more fat in them. Your peanuts, as I mentioned before, are really high in fat. There's fats associated with all of your desserts or your fun foods like your potato chips. So that's something to look at. And most of the times when people are looking to lose weight, they want to reduce that fat to 20 to 30 grams per day. And something to be aware of is that fats have more than twice the amount of calories per gram that carbohydrates and proteins do. Now, there's another area of foods that we haven't talked about yet, and that's your fibers. And your fibers are your green vegetables or your green leafy vegetables. They're the ones that we kind of forget about, and those are the ones that really have no calories unless you're cooking them in a certain way, which I don't understand. Tempura vegetables. You make something healthy and you make it fat by frying and then putting carbohydrates on it. But the fiber foods are the ones that I'll talk about later, that we need to increase the intake of those. So then the quantity, and the quantity is the amount that you eat. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the movie called Super Size, where a gentleman went out and ate all the extra large or large amount of portions he could and gained quite a bit of weight in that time period. Well, in this age now, anywhere you go, you can order things small, medium, large, or extra large. And the larger they are, the more calories they're going to be in them, whether it be carbohydrate calories or whether it be protein or fat calories. So in this area of quantity, what I'd like you to look at is portion sizes. And if you think of the cup of your hand as being a portion, it might give you a little bit more of an understanding when you're out to eat that filling a whole plate with pasta is not one portion, it could be four. An apple could be one portion. And if you look at your plate, a really quick thing, and I teach this to my children, is the rule of thirds. 1/3 of your plate should be carbohydrate, 1/3 of it can be protein, and the other third should be fiber. Now, that's quickly changing, and soon it's going to be half of fiber, and then the other quarters will be carbohydrate and protein. So there's some variation on it, but if you can think of thirds, that's the easiest way to address that. The next thing would be the time and the frequency of eating. Often there are people who want to lose weight, and so they'll go ahead and eat one meal a day. Well, when they eat one meal a day, they put themselves in starvation mode, so that when they eat that food, they end up storing it. Okay. Another thing that we do here in the United States is that we eat a very small breakfast, a medium lunch, and then the whole family gets together and we have a big dinner. And then what do we do after that? We sit around and watch TV or we go to bed. Okay? Guess what happens to those calories? Yes, they all get stored. All right, and that's another thing that leads to people being overweight. There are people out there that talk about should switch that around, and we should have a large breakfast, a smaller lunch, and even small dinner. And there's discussion about eating like a king in the morning, like a prince at noon, and like the queen at nighttime. Although I don't know if that will catch on here. Family get-togethers are very important to us people here in the United States.